All right. Hi, everyone. This is the Beans to Brew group, and this is our case 10.
In for case 10, we're going to run through some more acceptance criteria, focusing on one predictive user story, then diving into two of our prescriptive user stories, and then finishing off with, once again, the definition of done. So here we have the first predictive. The user story is, as a user, I want to determine when to stop making fresh pots of coffee or supplying more pastries to keep from producing an overwhelming amount of waste throughout my shift. The scenario here is the user wants to determine when Beans to Brew receives the most demand for their products in order to accurately reduce food waste and increase overall efficiency during shifts. The given is the user here brews coffee and stocks products on an as needed basis in order to fulfill customer orders, needs, and expectations. The when is the user sells brewed coffee and pastries to Beans to Brew customers during their shifts. And the then is overall food waste is reduced by not brewing coffee at inopportune times and limiting pastry orders in order to reduce that overall food waste.
So now we're going to talk about our first prescriptive user story and the acceptance criteria for that. So this story is, as a scheduler at Beans to Brew, I want to know what should be done to reduce the number of closures so that we can cut waste that stems from closing the shop early. And the scenario that makes this story true is Beans to Brew must close the shop when there is not a volunteer signed up for a shift, or if a volunteer misses a shift. And when the shop has to close early, that results in generally dumping fresh coffee instead of having that extra time to sell it. And so those closures can single-handedly contribute waste in the system that otherwise would not have waste. This scenario happens given that Beans to Brew must close the shop if there are no volunteers present. And the when is if there are not enough volunteers to work on a specific day, or if there are no volunteers signed up for a shift, or if someone was just absent from a shift, even if they were signed up. And by properly navigating this story, Beans to Brew would reduce the amount of waste that they generate by ensuring that they are open all day and selling the coffee that they brew instead of having to dump it.
All right, and so for our second prescriptive acceptance criteria and user story, so again, this one's about the waste. As it's one of our main goals, we decided to emphasize it both descriptive, predictive, and prescriptive. So for this case, the user story is, as a student volunteer at Beans to Brew, I want clear instructions on how much coffee to keep stocked based off of the type of popularity, so that I'm brewing the correct amount of coffee that will meet the customer demand and thereby reduce waste. Beans to Brew has 3 different types of coffee. They have a medium roast, a light roast, a dark roast, and then they also have a cold brew option. These are of different popularities. We did see from our descriptive statistics that medium roast coffee is a little bit more popular. So we want to ensure that we're keeping those different items, those different roasts stocked appropriately to meet the need, so that we reduce the amount of waste that is generated by ensuring that the brewing the most accurate types of order quantities based off of customer preference, and this also reduces waste. So this has to do with both understanding what coffee flavors are the most popular, how often they're being purchased in order to determine a quantity, as well as meeting our customers' needs.
And just as a recap for the criteria for definition of done from our user stories, we need to make sure that the user stories address functional behavior, user stories address non-functional behavior, are specific to a single user. They adhere to INVEST, which, as a recap, INVEST means independent, negotiable, valuable, estimable, small, and testable. The stories need to be small enough to fit into a single sprint, which is typically 1 to 4 weeks. Stories have acceptance criteria, as you saw exemplified with our user stories previously. And then they have conditions of satisfaction. And in sum, all of these elements are getting at the question of, did we identify the specific elements of problems presented and explain them adequately? And with that, we would like to say thank you for your time and consideration, and we're out.